I started writing this book, and it became a calling and not a calling card. Does anyone here have a chronic or terminal illness? So that was a trick question, because we all do. None of us are going to be here forever. We don't know what it is yet, but we all have an expiration date. And the fact that we are blessed with this life means that we're also going to die. We are mortal, and we're just passing through here. So, though my book sounds like it's about dying, it's mostly not. It's about living well all the way to the end. But we'll have to talk about death. We need to talk about death, because when we talk about things we fear, they lose their power. When we give fear a voice and name it and bring it to light, it's no longer scary. And when we acknowledge death, we appreciate life. I've never seen people so determined to be purposeful in how they live as when they walk out of a visitation or a funeral. And then they want to be kinder to their families. They want to be more purposeful in their next day. They want to leave their mark. We remember to live fully when we talk about death. We need to change the way we see it so that we can embrace it, so we can prepare for it, so we can walk the walk that we choose. If we talk about death and dying and put the fear of death and dying behind us, then we can focus on living and living well. So this book is not about dying really, it's about living well all the way to the end. It's about making choices about how you want to do that. Now, when we don't make those choices, because we haven't had these conversations, someone else makes these choices for us. We let fate unfold, and sometimes people we don't even know will make these decisions. The consequences of that are often devastating. So why did I title my book, How to Live Forever? I believe that our lives are our stories. And I believe that our stories are our legacy. And I believe that our stories make us immortal. When it comes to leaving a legacy, an insurance survey said that 10% of people, 10%, would like something willed to them, like grandma's nose or some money or a house. But 77% of people want stories, and they want life lessons passed on to them. One of my readers summed it up best. She told me what her mom wrote in leaving her story for her children and grandchildren. She said, "Of course, this isn't the end of my story. From your beginning, it becomes your story." So my book is divided into sections with stories, prompts, and questions, and some chapters have lists. And I wanted to get the boring stuff out of the way first. So the first section is on legal things, around legal documents like wills and trusts. And there's a list of things that you should gather together for your family for information, just the logistics. The next section is the part that's one of the parts that's most dear to me. It's on healthcare. And I was a registered nurse for decades. I worked in trauma and intensive care. See, I worked in the healthcare system, and I know most people there are doing the best they can and really care. But we're not machines. We can't all be treated the same, and what works well for someone may not work well for someone else. I also know that the healthcare system so far is designed to treat illnesses and not to treat individuals. So I want to empower people to make sure they're making choices that work for them, that they know what's good, what's not good, and make as informed decisions as possible. And that means not letting other people tell you what you should need or what you should do, but actually making those choices. The next section in the book is on planning your celebration of life. And we've come a long way in that. It wasn't terribly long ago we wore black and mourned when someone died. Now we actually celebrate their life more often than not. And there's a lot of different ways to do that now. There's a lot of different ways now to dispose of your body. But I have a story of a reader who sent me an email, and he's in his 80s, and and he wanted to share his wife's choice. They'd been married over 50 years. She had a terminal illness and a feeding tube. And eventually she realized that that feeding tube was keeping her alive. So she asked to have a living funeral where she invited her friends and her family to gather with her and to celebrate her and to say the things we often say posthumously. And at the end of that party, the feeding tube was removed, and a couple of days later, she died. And her husband, that's what touched him most in the book, because he got to know that she left the way that she wanted to. So the next section in the book is on telling your story, because your story does make you immortal. Your story is your legacy. It's important, I think, to remember that even death doesn't take away the memories. So I think we're creating memories when we live, but we're also leaving memories again that make us immortal. The next few sections are on relationships, because everything comes down to relationships. Every other section is dependent on relationships, and relationships can be hard. And most of us haven't learned how to handle conflict. One of my first clients was a prominent attorney in his 80s, and his wife was dying of Alzheimer's, and he had everything legal and healthcare-wise. He had everything arranged how he wanted it, but he had deep family conflict. And he asked me to help mend that, because he said, I came into this world well. I want to finish well. And he wanted to finish his wife to be able to finish well, to have better relationships with the children within the family before she died. Broken relationships are our biggest source of regret and loneliness at the end of our lives. So I talk about relationships, handling conflict, listening, apology, forgiveness in the last sections of the book. Finally, the last chapter at the heart of all this, I am a mediator and a conflict manager. It's even in my Enneagram, it's in my Myers-Briggs. Mediation is a tool to help individuals and families come into agreement on difficult topics. It's a tool to avoid the acrimony of litigation, where they say one person wins and one person loses, but I've seen it enough to know that everyone loses. No one is ever the same or brought together after litigation. Mediation is a terrific alternative to talk, to be heard, to listen, to make your own decisions, and to come to agreement and to bring relationships back together. So I'd like to close by doing a little bit of a reading from the book. This is crazy because I still read this and go, I like this. Last night, I received yet another phone call saying a young person had a rare form of cancer. I racked my brain. Are there more and more young people getting cancer, or am I at a stage of life when I'm more aware of what is going on in other people's lives? What can I possibly say that could make a difference amid so much pain? Yet as I reflected more, I realized that despite the glaring pain, there is truly a gift in these moments for all of us. Despite the instinct to label this as a senseless tragedy, this gift is the reminder that life does not have guarantees. It is the reminder that life is precious and short. Hardship, pain, suffering, and loss, sometimes devastating loss, are all parts of life. But that doesn't mean that life isn't beautiful. Because of these truths, I'm reminded that every single moment matters. If I believe that, and I embrace that, then I live with a deeper respect and appreciation of the moments that I do have. Knowing that the next diagnosis or the next trauma could be me or someone I dearly love, I have no choice but to be more compassionate and more loving to every single life I touch, regardless of race, gender, religion, or even attitude. How can I do this? I can listen with an open heart, take a moment longer, express appreciation, apologize, and be kind. It could be someone else's last moment. It could be mine. In this way, beyond writing this book to encourage you to confront your mortality and consider how you want your ending to look and feel, I've also written this book to remind you to consider how you want to live. If we can understand that death is part of our stories and write that part purposefully and have those difficult discussions, then we can create our own endings and embrace our futures. In doing so, we may find great peace and fulfillment because we're honoring our human need to be known, to have our lives be purposeful, and to leave a lasting legacy. As Atul Gawande writes, you may not control life's circumstances, but getting to be the author of your life means getting to control what you do with them. Hopefully, after reading this book, you feel motivated and prepared to control the circumstances surrounding the final chapter of your story. Finally, this I know to be true. I have one shot at this journey we call life. I don't know how long I have, but I know that I have one day less than I did yesterday. I also believe that we leave our legacy every moment, every interaction, no matter what we do and no matter where we are from. Every interaction with another person is an opportunity to leave a legacy of kindness or unkindness. Who we are in any given moment lives on. We are told in Scripture to number our days. When we do just that, by recognizing the finite nature of our days, I believe we can live purposefully, write a beautiful story, and die without regret. Thank you very much.